controversial subjects with the facts can be tense, but we are a science here to make things make sense.
Red hair, don't care.
It's what's a song? What's a song from Annie?
Oh, like it's a hard knock life for us.
Oh my God! I just talked about Annie. What is wrong with me? That's what we were performing. I was Miss Hannigan. I can't believe I didn't make the connection between Annie and red hair
and red outfit, famously.
Wait, she had
like a cute little red dress, didn't she?
I don't know anything about anything.
I'm not a fan of Annie, I'll be honest. But
oh wow.
I mean, not because of her red hair, just because I don't love it as much.
Oh, so you hate redheads? Interesting.
You only like it because Kanye West put it in a song. Okay, so we're going to talk about the science of red hair and jeans. But I'm curious, Greg, as you can see if you're watching the video, he's got a very, very red beard. How does it feel to be
you
called yourself strawberry blonde?
Well, okay, it's very interesting as for my identity. This
is your trauma. This is your, what do you say? Like, you're a minority in some ways.
Oh my God, I am underprivileged white man redhead. But it was really cool to learn about, honestly, red hair from a genetic perspective, because I don't really think that often about how I'm a redhead. Recently, I was like on the beach and someone was like, oh yeah, like when they recognized me from ASAP Science, and the way they described was like, oh, I could see the red hair from across the beach.
Oh really?
Yeah, and I was wait, what? Like I didn't want to be like, I actually don't have red hair, but I do have my beard, but I'm strawberry blonde. Like I didn't want to but it was just like, whoa, like they were just like, that was what was the thing, and I was like, it could have also been the fact that it links to pasty ass white skin, probably. But it was interesting. So like, red hair it's caused by a recessive gene called the MCR1 gene, which essentially all genes, as we know, or maybe you'll just find out right now, they code for proteins. So the MCR1 gene codes for the MCR1 protein. So it's a protein that's in our melanocytes, ours as in redheads, people with my white ass skin. We all have melanocytes, and those cells, which are in the basal membrane of your skin, the MCR1 receptors are proteins on the outside of melanocytes, and they do
being skin cells. Yeah.
Pardon?
Melanocytes being like skin cells?
Well,
just
they're actually
more than
not
just that.
skin cells. They're cells in your skin, in the basal membrane of your skin. Okay. Yeah, that's an interesting question.
Thank you.
But they create and produce proteins, but they also, produce melanin, and they two types of melanin, and they actually control the color of your hair, so that's why you get red hair. Like, it's all because of these specific cells, and these specific cells and these specific proteins come from genes, and it's those genes that are the recessive gene that you hear a lot about with red hair.
Right.
So it's kind of interesting because you're like, yeah, like having red hair, which is like obviously like an identity that people have, is only due to this like not that many genes and not that many proteins. They're just the ones that control the pigment in your skin and your hair color.
Yeah,
it's like
sense.
weird. I know. I just like thought it'd be like more
not controversy, but some debate around it just being. What was I reading about now? I knew you were going to kind of do the genetic side of it, but it was like it's not just one specific thing. Like, it's not so simple as to know. Like, I think they found red hair in Neanderthals, but it was coming from something else.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like, it's
true.
not just this one gene that turns on.
It's so funny because
that's like accounts for 80% or something like that.
Yeah, like MCR1 genes, like you can say melanocortin 1 receptor if you want to say it, is like this.
No one wants to say that.
It's the heavily studied. It's the one that we'll talk about most today. It's the most obvious from a biochemical perspective that scientists get. But you're right. At the end of every study, it's like there's a lot more complexity. Like, it's genetics. Like, oh my God, it's not a little bit off topic, but we're going to talk about it now.
What is it?
So I'm like reading this like amazing article about this genius female scientist who's like essentially treading water between the political left and the political right, because where is she from? She's from Texas.
Okay.
But okay, so it's like when we think of genes,
yes,
there's been some awful history like with science and eugenics, and the right a lot of the time likes to use this like genetic predisposition as to like like for white supremacy, or like to be like people are poor because they're actually like worse
it's,
at
like,
reading and it's genetic. It has
yeah.
nothing to do with like social, like your upbringing. It's like, and then it's more on the left where people are like, no, it's like if you come from poverty, like if you like
the impact of like the social impact or even epigenetic impact of your experience.
So obviously, like this woman is trying to now say like both are true, and if we look scientifically we can actually get somewhere, and if we think in these binary ways we're never going to get somewhere with science. And what they've started to do is look at large swaths of genes as opposed to like just one gene, which we're going to talk about today, and start to make predictions about how much of your like depression or aggression or like personality traits are linked to genes within your own communities. And it's like so interesting because she's like, people on the left are mad at her for even trying. People on the right are mad at her because she's actually saying like, you can't just say like the things you're saying that are not scientific. Like you have to be like a person, like a white person in Britain, like might have aggression because of like these swaths of genes that we're able to study. And so it's like, it's just so interesting. It's a bit of a like,
I mean, like it is interesting, and obviously it's just a sensitive area to talk about because it's easy to talk about when we're talking about like other species or animals, and we go like, okay, like their genetic behavior or their genetics end up defining parts about them.
We'll
like
drag rats to the core of the world. We'll be like, that rat's aggressive.
So I think on the surface, even people who are really progressive know, like, of course our genes, like we can't choose the color of our eyes. That is just genetic. Maybe there's levels of epigenetics when you're in a mother's womb or something like that. But obviously elements of human life are defined by genetics. Elements of all life are defined by genetics.
Eye color is so interesting.
It's so much more than that.
But eye color is so interesting because it's like the genetics rate the color of your eyes, and she would not argue that the color of your eyes will have social implications, right? Like if there are standards of beauty that are blonde hair, blue eyes, you're now reaping the benefits of the privilege of that, and she would never argue that. But she's like, it's still,
that's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that there is a level of like determinism on like if you have this and this, your eye color will be this.
Yeah. So actually that's interesting. We can get to like the Punnett squares of red hair because it links directly to eye color, because blue eyes are also recessive traits. So is red hair. And a recessive trait, what it means is that, for example, my mom has red hair. That means she has two red, for the MCR one, she has two recessive, like little case R's is like what I would picture of the gene. So no matter what, when she has a kid, she's going to be passing on that recessive red hair gene. Whereas my dad doesn't have red hair. So that means he is like heterozygote. So he has an uppercase R and a lowercase r.
I mean, he could be homozygote, uppercase R.
Oh, uppercase R.
Yeah.
No, but he couldn't because he had red-haired kids.
Oh, I see.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
okay, you're right.
In order for like me to have red hair, I needed to receive...
have to have at least one of the recessive genes.
So it's interesting. So there was a 50-50 chance that I would have like brown hair.
Yeah.
But I ended up with red hair, meaning that I got the recessive gene from my dad. So my dad must have it. And like he's Scottish, so like it makes sense. It's really cool. Same with blue eyes. It's like red hair is a recessive gene. It's something that is more rare because of that reason. But that recessive gene is the MCR1 gene, and that's what controls all like the melanin in your skin. And there are two types of melanin. It's pheomelanin, which is the one that redheads like produce a lot more than eumelanin, and pheomelanin leads to freckles, fair skin, tanning poorly, and like increased sensitivity to skin cancer. So it's like,
do you feel like it's a spectrum? Like, do you feel that, because I don't picture you as like, there are definitely people I picture as more fair and more ginger than
so
you,
some people,
right?
There are some people who think that maybe I did get a dominant R like from my dad, and that creates strawberry blonde. Like there's it's that there is a spectrum,
because you obviously have fair skin and you do burn, but it's not like you can't tan at all, whereas some people, it says like they literally can't tan.
I mean, it's like it's so August and like I've literally tried and it's like I'm still so white.
But you can still see lines on your body that show there is a tan, even if it's not like,
and I was shocked when the guy said I saw your red hair from across the beach. I was like, are you serious? Like, I'm not like
maybe it was like a red face.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, sorry. I feel like when I was talking about like earlier with that woman, I just like, and you brought up blue eyes. I feel like I didn't get it. And one thing I want to say about her is like, she's not interested in blue eyes because she's a psychologist and a geneticist. Her whole thing is like things like aggression and depression and these like murky things that we all deal with. Yeah. So I get what you were saying. You're like blue eyes. It's like, well,
that's what makes it. That's what makes it like this gradient of, and why people can cling to facts that support their opinions in the sense of like, of course, there are traits that we can say, look, the genes literally, at least from as far as we know, defined this specific trait of a color, which is really easy to kind of track and see what happens. But other traits are probably controlled by like way more than one gene.
Yeah.
And probably interact in an epigenetic way where like the factors you're exposed to in your life can actually turn on, turn off, make you like you can be predisposed to being a great runner, but if you never are in the conditions to push you to run, that you won't be a good runner. You know?
Yeah.
And like I think the more we get into like the psychological side of things, just the more complex it gets, the more it's kind of like we shouldn't listen to anyone, but it's like we should stop pretending we really understand that.
Yeah, it's true. And what was so interesting about her is that her last name's Harden. She's like super famous. Is that she was like, we had the Human Genome Project. We had this moment where we saw like the complexity, but like the Human Genome Project is amazing. We were able to sequence the human genome. And she's like, there were like genetic links to depression and aggression and even being gay. Like, but then she argues the left got too freaked out to continue that research, that we'd go down the path of eugenics, which is fair. That's scary. But she's now trying to like in a very nuanced way push forward by using that science.
Yeah.
And that's why the article's so interesting. It's like about the right and the left and how she has to like tread the water.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I think it makes sense. And like obviously if we talk about it in the space of like homosexuality, like that's obviously we can talk about this because it's like our perspective, and it does become a question of like, yes, as a scientist I do think that's interesting, like to know if there's a genetic component, but there's another side of me that's like, but why do we need to know that? Because ultimately A, it can be used for bad, and B, like why do we need to know that? Because so that can have weird implications. But as a scientist I am like, but don't we just want to know?
And it also would be nice to know if I'm predisposed to depression, because it can maybe help you be like, I'm going to go to medication more quickly than not, because I'm like, it is actually something in my genes as opposed to like a time in my life or something.
Sure, but it's like then someone can say, oh, well, if depression is a disorder, then maybe homosexuality is a disorder that needs to be treated with drugs as well.
Okay, yeah, the homosexuality one's so scary. It's like, okay, no.
That's all. That's why I think people get a little bit defensive when they're like, let's be careful because there are like sort of bad players.
But you know who are bad players and freaks? Us redheads.
Back to the redheads, mate. Can I give you some facts?
Yeah, like we are freaks of nature, though. That's what this podcast is called.
Do you feel like a freak of nature? Have you ever?
Okay, when I started reading all these studies about pain, I did, because it's like I don't feel pain.
Yeah, that can't just be your redheadness.
It's a link to red hair.
Greg, no word of a lie, feels zero pain.
No, I do feel pain. Do your
certainly
stats,
don't
and then
feel
I'm
emotional pain.
I'm going to explain how genetically my red hair MC1R gene is the reason I don't feel pain. But you continue.
About you?
Yeah, I can prove it with biochemistry. I'm about to. It's what all my studies are.
Yeah, but I have some contradictory research that we'll talk about. But no, it is still very interesting, and it's like a huge topic of discussion. But I was just going to say, like, yeah, Greg doesn't feel pain.
I feel pain. I just don't feel it like that much.
I also am like hypersensitive to pain, so the contrast.
I have like literally looked at my legs and been like, I'm bleeding. Like I've like had like, I'm like, I think it's a bad thing from an evolutionary perspective. Literally.
Greg will have to like, get out of bed to go pee in the middle of the night if we're in a different place and like crawl over me and fully just like put his arm on me and squish me, and I'm like, ow! And then he'll be like, what? I didn't even know I touched you.
But then if you do the same to me, I'm just like, oh, that's a nice little like massage while he gets out of bed.
So we're the extremes of both. Like I'm a baby when it comes to any pain, and you have very high tolerance.
Okay, yeah, we have to. I have lots to talk about with my study. You go into your stuff because I'm like.
Oh, well, I just wanted to say, and maybe you were staring at my fact sheet. Where do you think the most people have red hair?
Oh, I was not staring.
No, Greg always looks at my little nose.
like Scotland, Ireland, Britain.
Okay, pick one.
Oh, between Scotland and Ireland? Ireland. Or Britain. Oh, wait. Prince Harry or like Saoirse Ronan. Okay, maybe around London.
Well, where's your red hair come from, do you think?
Oh, my mom's Irish. Okay, Ireland.
Okay. So red hair occurs in 1 to 2% of the population. In Ireland, 10% of people have red hair.
Is Ireland?
Yes.
Oh,
However, Edinburgh,
Scotland.
in my hometown of Guelph, you would say Edinburgh. There's a street called that. So 6% of people in Scotland have red hair, which is less than Ireland. But Edinburgh is considered the redhead carrier capital of the world.
Oh my God.
So I guess that doesn't mean that as many people have red hair, but so many people have at least like a recessive.
There's some recessive lowercase r Punnett squares going on in that Edinburgh and Ireland.
So going on that gene, then why don't you talk about how this study is about pain and why it's like related to the same gene, which is weird.
So as I said, so the it's so funny. It's like MC1R gene again. It's a receptor.
Called the red hair gene.
It's the redhead gene. It's the receptor on your melanocytes. It's what makes your skin super fair, hair red. So that specific gene and that specific protein also does other things, and it secretes POMC, which is propiomelaanocortin. But when you have the MC1R redhead gene, you produce way less POMC. So POMC is a protein that is then cut up to create specific hormones in your body. And those hormones that it secretes are in charge of pain perception. So it's like you have lower POMC because of the exact same reason why you have red hair and have fair skin.
Which makes you have less pain receptors? Is that
so
what
you have, it's essentially you have an increased, it's confusing because it affects like all biochemistry. When you go through cellular biology processes, they're very complicated. But when it really affects opioid receptors, and what they are able to do back to mice is they're able to genetically modify mice to have a similar like MC1R gene and then test the pain tolerance in mice, and they have such a higher pain tolerance. So there's like, that's sort of like the connection where you like use genetic modification in mice of this literal thing that like I have, and they have increased pain tolerance.
I'm scared to find out how they find that out.
Oh God, it's like disturbing, but we're going to make our Lab Rats movie and it'll be fun.
Like a Disney Lab Rats movie?
We talked about this.
No, I know, but it's also like, well, I don't want to hide the truth.
No, there's going to be an amazing, like, disturbing part of the movie.
Where they're like,
it'll be for adults. It'll be Adult Swim. But it's like, there's going to be a rat that can't feel pain that, like, constantly gets run over by, like, trains. It's like, it's the one that was being literally tested.
It's actually a really good idea.
I think it's a good idea, too. Someone else write it. But it affects opioid receptors. And when you're asking about why is this research valuable, so what they think is that because it essentially decreases overall pain tolerance, but they actually think increases some opioid receptor activity, they think doctors should prescribe less opioids and less like concentration of opioids to redheads, because there's not a need for the same type of concentration of opioids when doing pain relief, and it might create more of an addiction more easily. Like,
so this is where I think sort of not the controversy, but the sort of different research says different things. Like in general, I have read that, but I did see some things that say redheads need more anesthesia, which I guess is not
so this is the other thing is like,
but they also, sorry, I was just going to say, like, I also read the redheads generally, or at least some studies have shown they have greater sensitivity to thermal pain.
Okay, so that's what I'm saying. It's like
the lower forms. So it's like either more or less.
That's what I'm like. Okay, so that's what I was trying to get at. It's like when it comes to this POMC protein that we have less of, it is the pre-proteins, one way to think of it. It gets cut up for very specific other proteins that decrease what they say is overall pain tolerance, but then it also messes with some opioid and pain receptors when it comes to thermal, like heat and cold. And they see that redheads are more sensitive to cold and heat.
But that doesn't seem true for you.
Well, heat it does.
Maybe when it comes.
But that's because like I also like do weird things because I'm obsessed with novelty. So I put myself in extreme cold and extreme heat for my own mental health. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you can still also change your like proprioception by doing stimulus.
Yeah, that's the other weird part is that like in pain research, there is no objective way to measure pain other than subjective
and then
reports.
like asking. I know when
I'm curious how they tested in mice. I guess obviously it's like based on shocks, and some mice might be able to like withstand like a different degree of shock.
But that still could just be like a mouse that's like badass that day.
Maybe. I'm sure on the whole though they're averaging it out. But in humans, it's interesting that I don't know. It's just like pain is subjective in the first place.
I found those thermal redhead versus brown haired studies like not that great. Like I read them and I was like, yeah, like I don't know. Like the reason this MC1R thing is interesting is because it's like they really show the pathway. It's in mice so they can be more extreme. But you're right. It was all about the thermal one was asking people how they feel about pain and cold, whether they have red hair or brown hair, like
which is the only way you can do it.
Yeah, it is in humans, unless we end up in some horrible future.
Because even if you showed that someone's like neurons were firing more and they were like, no, I don't feel pain, then you'd have to be like, okay,
well, I guess
that's the only way we can choose if those signals are resulting in pain.
There's also another protein, MC4R, which increases because of decreased POMC.
I hope everyone has memorized all
these. Yeah,
these.
you better have. There's a quiz at the end of this. But essentially, it creates overall pain tolerance, but not thermal pain tolerance. And that's another thing that is affected by the same genes in redheads. So it's like, it's just kind of interesting as someone who has red hair, who like genuinely walks around in life and is like, I'm bleeding, or like or like my friends are like, there? Didn't that hurt? And I'm like, wait, what? And I like pretend that I'm hurt, that I'm reading studies about how my biochemistry is making
like maybe
me,
it adds
like,
up. Yeah.
not feel pain. So tis a freak.
So, and you sunburn pretty easily, right?
Yeah, so like I always wear sunscreen, and I still like.
I always wear.
No, but I mean, like if I don't wear sunscreen,
don't always, and I get mad at you.
Okay. I do.
No,
always.
Okay. Sometimes I can tell you're trying to get a little bit more of a tan, and you would never go to the beach without sunscreen. But sometimes you'll be in our backyard, and you definitely don't have sunscreen on. I can tell you're like trying to hit the
3
sun.
minutes. Like I'm a little 3 minutes.
Exactly. You don't know.
Minutes.
I now put sunscreen on my face right in the morning in case I even walk to the store.
Yeah, see, if I had your complexion, I think I would definitely just be like roasting myself.
No, because it's not
all day.
good for you.
No, I know, but
it is important that you get exposed to the sun.
Yeah.
That is another thing. This, hypothetically, or the theory is that it evolved as an advantage to produce vitamin D in low light conditions.
Oh, like so, why? Like people
the
are
more
white?
North you go, is the lighter and more fair skin goes, and there's an advantage to vitamin D creation in those conditions for people. But then you have a higher risk of skin cancer.
Yeah, and then you're wrinkly and white and ugly.
Well, maybe not if you stay in those conditions.
Not
right?
if you
But now
Botox
there's like
yourself.
white people in Australia.
Yeah, and it's like, girl, have fun. Back to like we always drag Australians in this podcast. Hey, everyone,
well,
Australia,
also white people
you're in the wrong
Florida.
place.
It's like there's a lot of white people.
You too.
In the wrong
Let's drag
places.
Florida and Australia. That's both places that were like white people. You gotta go.
I read that it's like fair skin. It's predicted to prevent rickets in northern regions, and it allows the body to retain heat better, which I found confusing because I always thought like paler skin actually reflects more sunlight, but maybe when it comes to heat, it's different. I don't know.
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And another cool little fact is like it's not a positively selected trait. It's rather a lack of a negatively selected trait. So, for example,
are you talking about red hair or being white?
Red hair. They're the same.
Okay.
No, actually, that's not true.
No, it's not true, but it's like, oh yeah, it's not true.
They're very linked, but there are all through different cultures, whether that's through Asia or Africa or South America, there are like the recessive red gene can be like a black person with red hair or an East Asian person with black hair. Like it's not just associated with like a white person.
That's true.
In general, in terms of where it's most predominant is like northern paler
in the
skins.
representation of Anne of Green Gables.
Yes. But they were just saying like in Africa, for example, it's negatively selected against because if you're pale, you'll get burned. And so as a result, there's a negative pressure. But in the north, it's the lack of the negative pressure that makes it more prominent.
Gotcha.
Often traits are the result of a positive pressure towards something being an advantage.
I see. It's not a positive thing.
Yeah. I mean, that was something I read. Obviously, there is a positive pressure towards it absorbing more vitamin D.
No, but I know what you mean. It's like the negative feedback loop and the positive feedback loop. Like
it's just like there's no forcing this gene to go away. Whereas like in a really sunny, hot place, there is a pressure to get rid of it.
And when you learn scientific pathways, sometimes a positive feedback loop is just not a negative pathway. Do
Oh,
you know
exactly,
what I mean? Like
yeah,
that's like
yeah.
a confusing thing where
yes,
you're like,
where positive can mean negative sometimes.
yeah, it can mean just not negative.
Yeah, the words positive
yeah.
and negative are weird. Yeah, in one of my videos recently, I said it the wrong way. Not thinking about it, I said, and that's a negative feedback loop. Because I was talking about actually the oceans video about like the ocean getting hotter and hotter and hotter because as the earth heats up, like the oceans can't mix as much and can't absorb as much carbon dioxide, so it gets hotter. And I called it a negative feedback loop, but it's a positive.
It's a positive feedback loop that is
because
bad.
It's actually, yeah, exactly.
That's so
I think in my
interesting.
mind, I just wasn't thinking about it. Sorry.
Well, if you were to say it colloquially to someone, you would say that's a negative.
I've
feedback
literally
loop.
never heard you say that word. I love that word, but it has never come out of your mouth before.
Colloquially?
Yeah.
Okay, he just poked me. I didn't feel it though.
Poked you in the tit.
If I poked
In your blue tit.
my blue tits. If I poked Mitch the way he just poked me, he goes,
Oh, that's true. That actually,
this podcast would be off. He'd be taking a minute in bed.
A minute, I'd be like, I'm taking the rest of the day off because my ribs broke.
And then literally I'm like, I didn't even feel the poke.
I also felt the need to tell you in Anne of Green Gables, which I know you love.
I love the musical Anne, and it is colloquially known as Anne.
Oh my God.
We do not say of Green Gables
Why?
because it's a musical. It's a different intellectual property. And
Oh, is it really?
It is.
No, I thought it's a book.
I'm saying I've never read the books.
Okay, but
This
in
dumbass has only seen the musical, and if you go to PEI, you must see it with masks on if it's COVID open.
Just culturally, I was gonna say in that they are said to have tempers and sharp tongues, redheads, and then the Catcher in the Rye. There's also like alludes to stereotypes of redheads getting mad easily. I was just looking into cultural, and I mean, I asked about how you felt as a semi-strawberry blonde redhead through your life because there has been a lot of prejudice towards red people all through history. Some cultures revere it though. Like there are gods in the Egyptian culture that have red hair, but
God. I love
sometimes
thinking
it's
about
being
that.
associated in cultures like with being a witch or a werewolf or a vampire.
Well, I just hope we're past those cultures. I haven't had to deal with much redhead grief in my life.
No, but you still, the internet culture, at
Yeah.
least like 7 years ago, I felt was like really mean to redheads.
I do remember when I was teaching about recessive genes, I was like, obviously using red hair as an example, and there was like a little British kid in the class with red hair, and like everyone was just like, that's why you red hair, you stupid freak. Like everyone's like, I felt really bad because I kind of like put a spotlight on him,
Right,
but it was
by talking about it.
yeah, but it was really interesting because he was like a really big bully and a really big like
so, like,
issue
it's
in the
okay.
class, and I've never seen him so quiet and sheepish as like everyone bullied him, and I was like, did I just like set up a scenario to bully him? And I was like, I red hair too, like I'm a freak too, and then everyone's like, yeah, a freak, he's a freak, and I'm like, I don't know if he's ready to like have the
didn't
confidence
help,
to like
yeah.
have that joke be said.
I've never, like you've sort of talked about this before, but I've never really thought about what it would feel like to be a teacher and see a bully get their comeuppance.
Oh,
Which
it
would,
was
like, still make-
well, I remember it. My neurons are fully remember this. Like it was actually
like a
very
moment where you're like, and then you probably are like at the end of the day, you're like, but they're still a kid. It's actually
it was
sad.
a really cute moment where you see them as an actual human. Because
Yeah.
prior to that, I was like, you are such a little redhead shit freak.
Oh my god! You can only say that because you have red hair. Also, apparently, Judas in some in Spain and Italy was pictured with red hair.
Oh my god. Okay, so I think it's like I've been born in the right time for red hair. Like the prejudice is not real, but it's like back in the day they'd be like, he's a witch and like burn me.
Yeah, yeah. You would have been a vampire.
I would have been like, I'm gay and have red hair. They'd be like, burn him immediately with a faggots, a pile of burning sticks.
Okay, and we're censored. Every time we say that word, our YouTube videos get like demonetized.
Are you serious? If I say faggot,
It knows.
that
If you
is
say it one time.
wild. YouTube, grow the fuck up.
You
Okay.
have like a spittle in your beard. You're in your red beard.
I
Just
always
like-
have spittle, and I also just pick my nose twice in this video. So if you're on the podcast only and not on YouTube, you're missing out picking of my nose.
Yes, but if you are only on the YouTube, we got to figure this out. If you're only on the YouTube, you're missing the first half of the podcast.
Yeah, true. But that's
So it's
fine.
like everyone gets a little bit of something
yeah,
special.
yeah.
Yeah, so
I'll show my nipple right now for
oh
YouTube.
my god.
Little red hair coming into my nipples.
Well, anything else about redheads?
Okay, do you remember the MIA music video where like
No.
she gunned down a bunch of redheads? Yes,
Oh,
you do.
now I do.
It was incredible.
No, I do. I just was like, of course you're gonna bring up an MIA music video, like as if I remember, but that one did stand out.
It was really interesting, and I think it was kind of alluding to like how much more graphic it was to watch like quote unquote white kids get killed,
Right.
and like she was trying to say like if these were brown kids, like would people care less? Like such a fascinating concept. But the red hair thing to me was interesting, and I remember
and for
when
like
I
an
watched that.
arbitrary trait is kind of like the commentary is like all that connects these people is this like one thing, but they're probably all different in every other way. And
Justice for MIA, always. I don't know.
Isn't she an anti-vaxxer? I think there's like some controversy around that.
But true, I'm like, but also
We like literally
look it
started this
up.
podcast being like anti-vaxxers.
That's so funny. I have to really figure out who I like and who I don't like. I hate this pandemic. You know what I mean? I'm just like, oh God. Like, they're everywhere. These anti-vaxxers are everywhere.
I bet they're actually not. They are, but it's like when you look at the stats, it's like
that's true.
You know, almost 90% of our province has their first vaccine.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
What's weird?
What?
When you don't get the second.
Well, some people have a bad experience and then they get afraid. Oh. And I think maybe what happened for some people is then the cases went so down, then they were maybe like, I don't want to do it. But now as things are changing, they'll probably get their second.
It's just watch our video what happens to your body when you get the vaccine and get the second one, because honestly, it's like you need the second one. Yeah. Like it is exhausting. You've already done. You're not like any conspiracy theory or thing you're worried about.
And typically, if you had a bad reaction off the first one, you probably won't off the second.
Exactly. That means your body like already. I was like,
it means you might have already been exposed to it.
I was so mad.
You usually have the thing, especially with the mRNA vaccines, like on your second one, because your body now has built up a system. So when you get it the second time, your body inflames. But if you got it off the first one, then it's almost as though like maybe you were exposed already. I was so mad when I didn't feel anything after the first one. I was like, oh God damn it. It didn't work. You know what I mean? And then the second one, when I felt it finally, I was like, hell but
yeah,
I instantly
baby.
Was like, no, I don't want to feel sick.
I loved it. Because that made me be like, did they give me sugar water? Yeah, like I was just like, hello. Like I was just happy to know that like it was in me.
When are we ever going to be able to end? Stop talking about this pandemic.
I know, I tried so hard. I'm like, let's just do an episode about redheads because we're freaks. But like, okay, we're not freaks. It is a recessive gene.
Yeah, stop saying that. And I feel like you can only half say that because you're not like a full redhead. That it's actually maybe a little problematic.
Was I like? You might not hear from us. This might be the last episode.
Your beard and your bush, girl. You're a redhead.
Yeah, my bush is red. My bush is really red.
Yeah, it's like
which is very interesting. Know what? My best friend growing up had red hair. Both his parents had brown and black hair. Interesting. That means they were both heterozygotes because he was only had a quarter chance of getting that red hair and he got it. But when my mom would like push us around in strollers, there'd be this like kid with fiery red hair, and then me who didn't have a beard at the time and my hair was just like not nearly as red. And they'd all be like, oh my God, Anne, your kid's so cute. And then she'd be like, mine's actually that other kid because my mom has red hair. But it was interesting because it was like my best friend had two parents with black hair. And he was such a redhead. It was like a moment I remember, like early understanding genetics and like the Punnett square thing, like almost before I was taught, because my parents were being like, "This is why that happened." Like he looks more like my kid than you do.
Oh my gosh. And the other day I just had this whole realization. This is the last thing I'm going to say. It has nothing to do with this podcast, but Punnett squares. So often I'm like, how does 0.5 times 0.5 make 0.25? It sometimes blows my mind. Like how a fraction, when you multiply by fractions, the number gets smaller.
0.5 times 0.5 is 2.5?
Right. No, 0.25.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
You know that. I know that. But I always have this problem where I'm like, until I picture it as like, you're saying, what is half of half? Of course it's 0.25. But whenever I see like 1/2 times 1/, like a half, 0.5 times 0.5, I just am like expecting it to be
it has to be addition.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I literally thought you were trying to tell me that 0.5 times 0.5 was 2.5, and I was like, not only am I an idiot, but like the laws of nature have just fallen apart and I missed grade 6 or something.
Oh my God. No, just for some reason that stood out to me the other day when I was like, I do know the answer to this, but it feels unintuitive a lot of times when you multiply by fractions.
Also, I miss Punnett squares. Like we should just
go
do
back
them
to school.
Yeah, like they're fun to do. They're just like a little chart to figure out weird genetic things. Okay, so let's do it. Let's play a little Punnett square game. So if two parents, okay, I'm gonna ask you a question. Okay. If two parents have red hair, what color are their kids' hair gonna be?
Red.
Yeah, isn't that crazy? Now I'm like, no wonder Ireland and Edinburgh.
Unless there's some other factors that we're not considering, and it's a gene that's controlled by maybe more a trait. But it seems as though it's primarily
in general, you're gonna have a bunch of little redhead kids, and if one has brown hair, you're gonna be like, wow, life's complex. Okay.
Yeah, and I read that there's some claims. This is my last. I'm actually gonna stop talking about it. This relates to the episode. There are some claims that people have made, scientists even, that say like redheads will go extinct one day. But it's not true. Most scientists refute this. And even though a small percentage of the population is redhead, a much larger percentage actually is recessive genes carried around.
Yeah, and like,
and I think it's like estimated that potentially 30% of people carry this recessive gene.
And Ireland and Edinburgh is going to keep this shit alive for years. And you know what I mean? Like and like there's recessive R's all over Toronto. If I make a baby with one of them women, there's
one
a
of
redhead
them woman.
baby.
I love how you couldn't even say that properly. If I make a baby with one of them woman.
What do you mean? I'm gonna make babies with women all I want.
Okay, I said the way you said it didn't sound English. You turned into a gay man. You're like, and if I make baby one of them woman. Truly, Ireland must be just a bunch of Weasleys running around. You know?
That's so cute.
They're the cutest little family.
I love the Weasleys, and both the parents have red hair. Is that why they all have red hair? Yeah. That was when we should have.
But does Ginny, like, she's not, it's a little dark. It's not like.
Ginny has red hair. Are you?
No, I know she does, but Ron's hair in the movies seems the most red to me. Right?
Wait, Ginny's? I can't.
It's a little bit.
I always
browner.
can't get out of my head the dang memory of like reading the books.
Did you know Greg has still not finished the books?
I left the last chapter in order to never have them end.
Oh, I guess her hair is more red.
Which is so annoying because I found out what the last chapter is, and I was like, "Are you serious?"
Well, if you watch the
some
movies,
dumb flash forward.
It's not that interesting or good. And,
I was
canceled.
Panicking when those. I was absolutely panicking when those books were ending. Like I remember, like I couldn't even read the final chapters because I was just like, oh my god, it's ending. And it's like it's all like white light. Like in my head, it's like everything was like what happened.
The scene where
it's all white, and I remember being like, I'm gonna faint. And I remember just thinking like so sad. It was like loss of innocence, like my childhood's ending, and I was just like 16, 17, like going off to university. I was like, I don't even know. I was just like, I can't finish this book. It's too much.
Maybe that's why you kept your childlike spirit. You never finished Harry Potter.
Oh my god!
And if you had, you would have not been a kid anymore.
Or maybe it's because I'm a freak from nature, can't feel pain with red hair.
Oh my god! No, we need to do a podcast about
what?
It. We had so much to talk about it.
We
finally watched it, the first
movie.
one. Save it. We're gonna.
No, it's not the first one. 2017.
You know what?
It came out in like the 80s.
No, I know. I'm just saying, like the first of the two new ones.
Okay, yeah.
People hate the second one. Yeah.
Oh, it was so good. Is that Clan
another
redhead? Yes.
Well, I mean, yeah.
He is,
but
and
it's
he's
like,
a freak.
is it a wig? We don't know. Okay, thanks for listening.
And
stop showing your nips.
Make sure you subscribe. Feel free to share these podcasts. Just press the three little dots and share it with your friends and family. That's a great thing for the algorithm.
Give a little review.
And there's going to be weird podcasts coming up. For example, one on it.
So exciting.
It's so freaking good. Okay, bye.
Bye.